Welcome back to part 3 of the reflective marbles. During this session, we're going to paint the red marble and also get started on the yellow one that's right in front of it. I'm outlining the red marble with a 704 Carbothello, but then I decided it needed a little more color. So I'm using my 770, which is Payne's Gray, to outline the marble. Payne's Gray is a really cool color. It has almost a purplish tint to it, and so it'll go well with the white tones in this marble. I'm going to use a 720 Carbothello light gray and also a 704 Carbothello medium value gray to add color up close to the edge of our red marble, to the outside edge, before adding the soft pastel. I'm using a Mount Vision 457 warm gray to color in around the red shapes on the upper part of the marble. Now I'm using my little blender to blend the soft pastel around the red shape up near the outer edge of the marble. I'm taking a little excess that's on my blender and blend it down around the bottom. But I want to get it nice and smooth before we add additional color. I'm using a 770 Payne's Gray to shade in. Payne's Gray is kind of a purpley color. Has a cool tone to it. So it's very nice to use it, particularly in this place. And we'll use it to shade the side of the marble around the top and the side. Here I'm adding a little more Payne's Gray and going to blend it in with the blender. I'm using the 704 gray to darken it up a little bit more, and I'm leaving room at the top for the highlight. Darkening the right side, it's darker. than the left. I'm adding a touch of the Conte 43 Prussian green into the gray on the left side to kind of tie the colors together, and then blending it with my finger. I'm outlining the upper edge with 750 black. I'm using the black to color in this little tiny sliver and to outline the shape at the bottom of the marble. And just adding a tad more color on the edge and up at the top. I'm filling in this shape with black. Down at the bottom of the marble, I outlined it, and then I'm filling it in with the 750 black. I'm leaving a little area for white reflection. Then I'll put in with my 100 Carbothello. Adding some white over this black to kind of just glazing it over to lighten it up a little, turns it a shade of dark gray. My hand's kind of in the way, but I'm using a small piece of Rembrandt black to make that a little blacker on the side. Add a little more green into the side of the red marble with Pitt 165 Juniper Green. That's a nice touch. I'm using my white Carbothello 100 to add some white, lighten up the color that we applied earlier. Here I'm adding a little Mount Vision 544, which is a midnight blue, is what they call it, but it's very light blue, to brighten up the gray area that we applied previously. I'm going to add a bright white highlight at the top of the marble, but before I do that, I'm going to outline that area with my 100 white pencil and color in the shapes. And then over that, add the Rembrandt 100.5 white soft pastel. Now we're going to start on the red shapes in the marble. Outline the red shapes with Conte number 3, which is vermilion. We're going to use several different reds to get the effect that we want. After outlining the shapes, take a piece of 372.5 permanent red Rembrandt and color in the shapes. The soft pastel is more brilliant than the pencils, and that's why we're using it to color in the shape. And then blend it with your little blender to even out the color. Use a Carbothello 330 purple to add the dark areas to the red shape. And then use your little blender, the clean side of one of your blenders, to blend the color together, blending the dark red into the soft red pastel we previously applied. Using the Conte number 39 garnet red, go over the red shape and intensify the color. The 39 is a brighter red. use a Conte number 19 purple to add some darks, to intensify those darks over on the left side. Now using the Conte Indian Yellow on the left side of the main red shape, add orange. Add this orange color, mixing it into the red to intensify it. So I'm adding red 39 back into the Indian Yellow to make it orange. And using my 750 black, I'm going to darken the tip a little by just glazing some black over it and adding a little black line. We're going to add some more down near the bottom to darken that. Use the Carbothello 100 white to add a white line into the second shape and to tidy up around the red shapes as needed. Darken the black shape with your 750 pencil. And add more red, darker red at the bottom as needed with the number 19. Using a little piece of Rembrandt white, add a bright highlight on the left side. I added a little more white to make it a little brighter. I'm also using an eraser to clean up the edge of the marble that's underneath the red. Red tends to carry and get all over your painting if you aren't careful. So use a piece of tri-tip eraser or a kneaded eraser to clean up those areas. We're going to move on now to our yellow marble. I'm using the white Carbothello 100 to outline the top of the marble and the left side. My pencil is very sharp for this. Now I'm going to use my 750 black to continue the outline down on the right side, all the way down almost to the bottom. And I'm using my 100 white on the left side. I'm going to use the white pencil to outline all the little shapes that are reflected in the top of this marble. Now these shapes, and I'm going to fill them in, these shapes are the reflection of my kitchen window in the marble. Using a Carbothello 440 Sky Blue, I'm going to fill in these 4 little shapes under the white ones. Using the white 100 pencil, I'm going to outline these little shapes, these little triangular shapes. And I'm going to go over blue with it lightly. And then I'm going to outline the larger shapes and add a little white to them. They were reflecting blue. This is emerald green, Carbothello 530. I'm going to put a little bit of that into the shapes. And glaze a little white over it to lighten it. Now on this side, I'm using my 440 Sky Blue. It's a zigzaggy shape, and I'm going to fill it in with that. It's kind of an odd shape. I'm using the Conte 21, which is a green-blue, to go over that shape. And I'm also going to use the Conte 43 Prussian green to add a little green hue over that as well. Using my white 100 Carbothello, I'm going to add some white back into that shape. We're going to fill in the area around the yellow shape before we color the yellow shape. So using a 308 Palm Green NuPastel, I'm going to color in the little shapes at the top of the marble and blend them with a little blender. I'm using my Pitt Pastel number 159 Hooker's Green to shade the upper edges of the marble and over onto the left side up close to the white line we put in previously. Continue to apply 308 Palm Green NuPastel around the highlights and over to the right side of the marble. Continue adding palm green and then blend it with your little blender very carefully around the shapes. Use a 174 chrome green to add some more green over the green we applied earlier, over the 159 Hooker's green, and darken it up a little bit. So we're going around to the left with that green, going over the palm green, and it helps to fill in the tooth of the paper and blend the green colors together, and also darkens it. Here I'm darkening the green a little more with the 165 Juniper Green Pitt Pastel pencil. This also blends the color and pushes it into the paper. So I'm drawing in the window panes with this green that are visible in the highlights, outlining them and making them a little more even. I've switched back to the 159, which is Hooker's green. It is a little more a bluish tint to it. I know I use a lot of greens, but they're all different and bring something exciting to the mix. So I want to mix this one in too. I'm outlining the windows reflection with the 159 Pitt Pastel Hooker's green. I'm continuing to use the 159 Hooker's green. I'm outlining the yellow shape now with the 159. I've noticed that I need to add a little more light on my reflection, so I'm using my 100 Garbothello to add a little more white. Now we're going to add more palm green 308 around our yellow shape. And add some 159. Around it, and also Pitt 165 Juniper Green. So I have a lighter green and then darker green, adding a little Conte Palm Green number 43 as well. I take every opportunity to add more color. A little 750 black to darken it and finger blend. Here I'm using Carbothello 575 Leaf Green to mix into all the different greens we put down. It's a little bit lighter, adds a little bit different color to the mix. This is Carbothello 440. I'm going over the highlight and blending that in a bit, softening it. Using the white to blend it together. I'm using 545 Emerald Green Light Carbothello to brighten up and add a highlight on that side. Pay close attention to your reference photos and use every opportunity to enhance your painting by adding these little details. This is one of the things I find so much fun about painting glass. I'm using the dark blue Prussian blue Pitt number 151 right in this area. It adds a lovely dark blue. It mixes well with the green. So now I have my Palm Green NuPastel 308, and I'm going to add more color around the yellow flower. Blend that with my little blender. Continuing to work around the yellow flower or yellow shape with palm green. And then blend it with my blender. Fill in the dark blue shape on the bottom left side of the marble with a navy blue NuPastel if you have one. If you don't, use the 151 Prussian blue Pitt Pastel to fill in that area. I'm adding color with a dark green, Hooker's Green 159 Pitt Pastel. I'm filling in that little shape with 530 Carbothello Emerald Green, just that little tiny area. Using my black 750 to come down the inside rim of the marble. Intensify the blue area with the 151 Prussian blue. You can also add some Pitt 159 Hooker's Green in that area. This is just to the right of the blue. So we're adding some of that Hooker's Green. After filling in that area with the Hooker's Green, I'm coming back with the 151 Pitt Prussian Blue to add some blue over that area and darken it. All of this blue color is reflected from the blue marble that's over to the left of this one that we haven't painted yet. And darken the area further with the 750 black. Fine-tune the colors as you go around, adding more blue or green as needed. Here I'm using Carbothello 590 Viridian Matte Green to fill in the area at the bottom, and also add darker color wherever it might need to be a little bit darker. I'm adding some light blue color with Carbothello 440 Sky Blue. That looks pretty good. And then I'm using a 100.5 Rembrandt to add some bright whites. At the top and on the side. I'm using 590 Carbothello Viridian Matte to add green to the right side of the marble. Use 545 emerald green light to add some highlights to that upper right area. And use 151 Pitt Prussian blue to add a dark band of color right next to the white closest to the outside edge of the marble. Add some accents of dark blue with the Pitt 151 Prussian blue. Use Pitt 165 Juniper Green to add the darker green shapes on the lower right. Darken the shapes with 750 black, applying it lightly over the green, just to darken it. Use the black to draw a little shape down there in the bottom on the right hand side. Then use the Pitt 151 Prussian blue to deepen the black in the middle of the marble, and also to add darker blue color in the bottom right side of the marble. Now using my dark green 590 Viridian Matte Carbothello, I'm filling in this little green area on the right side of the marble. Then I'm going to accent that with 570 Leaf Green Middle, which is nice and bright. So I'm going to color that color over the Viridian Matte to lighten it and blend a little bit to indicate the shine. Now in the center, over up next to the yellow shape, I'm going over that with Conte 37 Indian Yellow, which is a reflection of the flower shape that's going in there. This area I'm coloring with 575 Carbothello Leaf Green. It's a little bit lighter. Use a dark green to fill in the bottom area of the marble. Use Pitt 165 Juniper Green, which is a nice dark color. For accents, use Carbothello 570 Leaf Green Middle. At the very bottom, use Carbothello 440 Sky Blue to add the little blue accent underneath the yellow shape. And over that, use 100 white Carbothello pencil to add the bright highlight. And a little bit of 151 Prussian blue Pitt pencil. Fill in the very bottom of the marble with Carbothello 575 Leaf Green. Add a white line at the top and bottom of the shape with Carbothello 100 white pencil. And then draw a black line with Carbothello 750 underneath. Add little highlights with the 151 Pitt Blue, Prussian Blue, and with the white, and with Carbothello 440 Blue, Sky Blue. Add the brightest highlights with 100.5 Rembrandt White. Add some color to the shadow reflection under the marble. We'll address that more in part number 5. But I'm using the Carbothello 575 leaf green and some darker Pitt 165 juniper green over the top. And then I'm just rubbing it with my finger. I also added the yellow reflection from the flower that shows up in the reflected water. And for that I'm using Conte 37 Indian Yellow. Here I'm adding some white accents with my white 100 Carbothello pencil. I also added more medium green, which is the Carbothello 575 leaf green underneath, and darkened it right up next to the marble with Pitt Pastel 165 juniper green. I'm also adding the reflected yellow with the orange pencil, the Conte 37 Indian Yellow, into the green at the base of the marble. Darken the shadow even further by using the 390 Indigo Blue pencil. That adds a nice color. You can also use a black 750. Now we're going to develop the yellow flower shape in the center. I'm using a 575 Carbothello leaf green just in the center to add some color. I'm looking at the shapes that form this flower and just coloring right in the center where it's the darkest. I'm darkening those shapes with the Pitt 165 Juniper Green. I'm continuing to use the 575 leaf green, and now I've added another color, and that is 570 leaf green middle, and I'm putting that next to the leaf green as we move outward back to the leaf green in the center. Now I want to add the yellow color to my flower, and I want it to be fairly intense, so I'm going to use a softer pastel. This is a NuPastel 257 Cadmium Yellow. It's a nice bright yellow. I'm using the NuPastel because it's a softer pastel and it's highly pigmented. So I'm outlining my flower shapes and coloring it in with the yellow. I'm glazing over the yellow with the Carbothello 575 leaf green to kind of blend into that yellow so it won't be so super bright on that particular petal. I'm also using a little bit of brown, maybe a 645 Carbothello, to add a warm color to that petal. I'm moving on to the next petal using the bright yellow 257 and blending it with my finger, working around the flower. On this petal, I'm using the 560 Leaf Green Pale, and over that I'm going to put some of the bright yellow. As that petal is further into the back, so we don't want to be as bright as the ones in the front. Put some yellow over the next petal. I'm adding some more dark green with the 165 juniper, and then bringing in some yellow just on the tip, stroking it in carefully. Here I'm using 570 Leaf Green Middle in the center and brightening it with our 257 yellow. I couldn't see that particular petal, so I drew in a dark green line. Now, working over the next one, I'm adding more yellow. Here I'm using some Conte 37 to darken the yellow a bit. I've added more green, more yellow, and more 560 leaf green pale. I wanted to add a brighter yellow, so I'm using Conte number 4 yellow medium to pump up the color a little more, even out the edges of the shape, and make them a little yellower, a little brighter. Conte pencils are really good for that. And to add the brightest highlight, I'm using a little sliver of 100.5 white Rembrandt. I'm adding additional bright whites around the marble and one in the very center of our yellow flower shape where it catches the light. That looks perfect. And by the way, I always blow off my extra dust. I'm going to add some brighter lights in the highlight area. And this is a real skinny little piece I saved just for doing things like that. Now I'm going to even up some areas that have gotten smudged. That was a Carbothello 590 Viridian Matte. Here's our yellow pencil again. And I'm cleaning up that area where the white got a little bit out of hand. I'm using a 750 black pastel pencil to outline the flower petals at the top, on the top right. And also adding black down at the bottom on the left. Putting in a few more yellow highlights. I hope you've enjoyed part 3, and I'll see you in part 4 where we paint the last marble, this beautiful blue marble.